What if I told you the Philosopher's Stone was real? What if I told you you can actually make the Philosopher's Stone and that the ancient alchemists teach us how to do it so? It's likely you've heard of the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone from Harry Potter, but it goes much deeper than that. Something we all have: urine. The idea of using urine is actually not that far-fetched. The BBC actually made a YouTube video on how to create the Philosopher's Stone, at least some of the beginning steps, and in that very video they use urine. So to begin, we begin with 1 liter of urine, best upon wake up. The darker the better. Now we'll begin distilling the urine on low heat in a water bath. You should distill at no more than 80 degrees Celsius or 170 degrees Fahrenheit in the water bath. Now the distillation will be quicker if the ambient room temperature is lower, though not below freezing. The top opening of the retort should be hermetically sealed. It is best for the retort to be connected to another bottle in which the distillate, the distilled urine, is to be collected. This would be a 50 milliliter Keldal flask. If the two are not connected, which is likely to be the case, then you can cling wrap film where they connect to stop the distilled urine from evaporating again, though a hermetic seal is safer. The bottle should not be in the sun. The distillation will be much faster if the bottle is lower than the heat source, which means it might need to be leaned over to one side in order for the neck of the retort to be pointing downwards as much as possible. When the urine is all distilled, there will be a nasty black mass in the bottom of the retort, though it may not look black the first time, which needs to be calcined. Take the retort out of the water bath, unplug the top of the opening, and put it onto a high heat gas stove. Leave it this way for a few hours until the mass is all dry and cracked. If there is still liquid in the retort, especially after the first 2 distillations, you should start the calcination on low heat, just to evaporate off all the liquid. Then apply high heat when there is no more liquid. If you apply a very high heat while there is still liquid in the retort, the urine might bubble up and spill over. The purpose of the calcinations is to burn and destroy the solid part of the urine in order to extract the salt, which is incombustible. So do not be scared to put the high heat flame directly against the glass of the retort and leave it like this for a few hours. You need to really burn the solid matter in the urine. The first few times you perform the calcination, a nasty smoke will come off of it, which will stain everything black and smell really bad, so I strongly recommend doing this outside. Do not breathe in the smoke, it's poisonous, and do not perform the first few calcinations in your own house. That which remains, burned in the bottom, is the dry earth where the crystalline salt of the stone lieth hid, from the crowning of nature. On your first distillation, only distill half of the urine, and then calcine the remaining half, allowing the lower half of the urine to just evaporate away in high heat. Calcine the remaining urine until it is dry and cracked. Now you will have 250 milliliters of urine distilled once. For your second distillation, collect another 500 milliliters of fresh urine. Pour this onto the calcined urine at the bottom of the same retort. Again, distill only half of the urine and calcine the remaining. You will now have 500 milliliters of urine distilled once. The reason for the first 2 distillations to be done in this way is so that you can obtain 1 liter's worth of the body of urine in order to get more white salt. The reason that you distill only the first half from both batches of urine is so that the distilled urine contains the lightest particles, which just makes it more pure, but it's technically not necessary. For all further distillations, pour the 500 milliliter of distilled urine back into the calcined body in the retort. Distill the distilled urine once again, then calcine again. Pour the same 500 milliliter of distilled urine back on again, distill again, calcine again. Repeat the distillation and calcination again and again between 3 and 10 times. Nothing is to be done without hard and persevering toil. After a few distillations, you will see a white salt forming on top of the black mass. When calcining this, there will be a sweet, flowery chemical smell given off. Keep repeating the distillations and calcinations until the whole surface is white, and it has formed into large enough crystals for you to separate it from the black mass. This may take up to 10 distillations, or it could be much less. When its impurity is purged away, it emits a most sweet fragrance from the glory of the world, or table of paradise. If you have already distilled the urine 10 times and you don't think you have enough of the white salt, then you can stop the distillations and just continue the calcinations, pouring distilled water on top of the mass instead of distilled urine. When you see enough of the white salt is formed on top, which are the lightest of the particles, you need to extract them, which may require breaking the retort. If you do need to break the retort, then wrap tape around the bottom half of the retort and try to just break the glass at the top, keeping the bottom half intact. Remove the white salt and separate any impurities from it. Try not to touch it with your fingers, or it will sting them. You should further distill the distilled urine 3 times in the clean retort. Congratulations, you now have the mercury, distilled urine, and sulfur, white salt of the sages. I really recommend spending extra time on the first part to ensure that the white salt and distilled urine are extremely well purified. If you skip a couple of distillations at this stage, you won't have saved time. You'll have made the second part take months longer. Now that you have the mercury, distilled urine, and sulfur, white salt of the sages, you need to combine the two so they can putrefy and turn black. Crush the white salt into powder and place it into the 50 milliliter round Keldal bottom flask. Add a few drops of distilled urine, just enough to cover the salt, not too much. Hermetically seal the flask, making sure the stopper is airtight by putting wax, Vaseline, or silicone sealant around it. Place the flask into the water bath. Only the bottom half of the round part of the flask should be in the water. The rest of the flask should be in the air. You might need to cut a hole in the lid of the water bath or make your own lid. The temperature should be equal to or slightly greater than human body heat, so around 100 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 to 40 degrees Celsius. At this stage, the heat should be of the degree that causes evaporation and condensation to imitate rain, but the salt should always be moist and never dry. If the ambient room temperature is too high, you will need to reduce it by putting the water bath in an air-conditioned room while putting ice against the neck of the flask. This process will be faster if the ambient temperature is lower. If you can see that there are drops of water condensed at the top of the vessel which never fall, then you need to reduce the ambient temperature. The salt will slowly absorb the moisture. The whole process can take longer than a year, so don't give up. As long as you know you have not used too much heat both now and the distilling of the first part, then it will work. When the salt has absorbed the moisture and starts to become dry, add another couple of drops of distilled urine. Then wait again until the salt again starts to dry, and add another couple of drops. Continue doing this until the salt is entirely saturated, at which point it will be of the consistency of melted wax. Try not to move or knock the vessel, although it is not the greatest of deals if it has to be moved, and it's not a big deal if the degree of heat is wrong, as long as it is not hot enough to burn. If there is too much water, you can remove some or increase the heat. While there is a problem, the stone will not develop any further, but it will continue once you have corrected your mistake. The black stage. When the salt has been entirely broken down and saturated with the distilled urine, it will turn black, which is a sign of putrefaction. Black is the natural color of decomposed matter. The body will not turn black suddenly, but it will have been getting darker and darker during the previous imbibing stage. When the whole mass has turned black, then you know it has putrefied completely. This is a great sign because you will now be more than halfway to completing the stone. Complete pitch blackness to represent death must be reached. When you are sure that the salt is entirely saturated, then you need to turn up the heat a little. It's difficult to give an exact temperature since it depends on many factors, but just turn up the heat little by little until the body starts to become dry. But the heat still needs to be low enough that the moisture will rain down. The difference only being that during imbibing, the salt had to always be moist, whereas now you want the salt to dry out between the rains. Slowly the body will start to get whiter and may pass through different colors, including one that looks a bit reddish. Don't worry about these colors, we just need the body to get white. In the two phases, there are intermediate colors, but but in the first they are more dingy and obscure than in the second, and very much less numerous. In the progress of the substance from blackness to whiteness, also known as the second phase of our magistry, the most beautiful colors are seen in a variety such that eclipses the glory of the rainbow before the perfection of blackness is reached. There are also some transition colors, black, azure, and yellow. And the meaning of these colors is that your substance is not yet completely decayed. While the body is dying, the colors are seen until black night shrouds the whole horizon in pitchy gloom. But when the process of resurrection begins in the second phase, the hues are more numerous and splendid because the body is now beginning to be glorified and has become pure and spiritual. The colors do not seem to appear in any particular order, but the colors will be clearer and more distinct the purer your water of life is. The four principal colors are white, black, white, red, and this always follows in the same order. The order of the intermediate colors cannot be so certainly determined, and you ought to be content if within the first 40 days or a few weeks you get the black color. There is only one caution you should bear in mind in regard to this point. If a reddish color appears before the black, especially if the substance begins to look dry and powdery at the same time, you may be almost certain that you have marred your substance by too violent a fire. You should be very careful then about the regulation of your fire. If the fire be just hot enough but not too hot, the inward chemical action of our water will do the rest. Now the white stage. Having adjusted the heat during the black stage so that the body dries out in between rains, the black body will slowly pass through various colors and turn white. As when turning black, the whiteness will not appear suddenly in one day, but it will be a slow progress over a few months. While it passes from blackness to whiteness, a great variety of colors are observed. Nor is it at once perfectly white. At first it is simply white. Afterwards it is of a dazzling snowy splendor. When the body has turned totally white and all the moisture has disappeared, you have the white stone, which can either be fermented with silver or continue to the maturity of the red stone. Fermentation. Both the white stone and the red stone must be fermented with silver or gold respectively before they can be used. It is only possible to ferment the white stone with silver and the red stone with gold. Nothing else can be used. Neither can silver and gold be used to ferment both. The stone would be harmful if ingested without being fermented first. The stone is already developed when we apply the ferment, but it needs to be fermented in order to be used for our purposes. The stone will break down the silver or gold into its own form, but adopt the frequency and stability of the silver or gold. The life energy needs to be given an impression of a stable form. The fermentation is the same process as the second part of the work, only you will also be adding silver or gold, and the process will be much faster. The quantity of silver or gold you use should be between 2 and 10 times the quantity of the stone. Find the purest silver or gold you can. It's best to use silver or gold dust. If you cannot get dust, then grind what you have into filings as small as you can. Grind the stone to dust also, and mix it together with the metal. Now follow the instructions of the second part. Black stage and white stage. Imbibe, make black, make white. If you are fermenting the red stone with gold, then increase the heat at the white stage and continue all the way to the red stage. The fermentation process should take 1 to 3 months the first time. Now the white stone is complete. It can be multiplied in quantity and quality and raised to the power of the red stone. Contradictions. The safest move is to follow Albertus Magnus, who advises us to divide the stone into 2 parts at the white stage. One part you will ferment with silver into the white stone. The other part you will continue to develop into the red stone. Then, if your unfermented white stone fails to turn red, you can mature part of your fermented white stone. This also means you will have both the white stone and the red stone instead of having to choose between them, and you will therefore be able to take advantage of the medicinal value of the white stone sooner. Save a little of the stone before each of the fermentations. So in the end, you'll be in possession of 4 powders: the white stone fermented, the white stone unfermented, the red stone fermented, and the red stone unfermented, therefore easily allowing you to test the effects of each. If you're ever worried, feed or test it on small animals first. It is an advantage to possess both stones fermented and unfermented, as this will allow even more usage and experimentation. The red stage. The red stone is only a further development of the white stone. If you are attempting to mature the unfermented white stone instead of the fermented white stone, you will need to be more careful with the heat. It might also be an idea to multiply your white stone a few times before attempting to make it red. This may speed up the process, as the stone will already be much purer. Hermetically seal the white stone in a clean round-bottom flask, a Caldel flask, as before. Carefully heat it with a dry heat, but still in the water bath, to the degree that the white stone melts with the consistency of melted wax. When the stone turns an ash-orange color, then calcine it on a high heat source, still sealed with an aggressive heat, as you did with the urine in the first part. It may take a few months, but it will eventually turn into a red powder. When you have the red powder, save half, and ferment the other half with gold, and you will have the red stone both fermented and unfermented. Multiplication. The stone only has to be made once, and then it can easily be multiplied in quantity and quality. The multiplication is the same for the white stone and the red stone. The most obvious method of multiplication is to repeat the whole process again as you did in the fermentation. You can do this with or without adding gold or silver, but by adding more ferment you are increasing the quantity too. Every time you repeat the fermentation, the stone will get bigger and 10 times more powerful. The time it takes to complete the process also gets less and less every time, since the stone gets more powerful, until the process can be done in just a few seconds. The unfermented stones can also be multiplied, but of course you will multiply them by repeating the second part again. Imbibe, make black, make white, make red, adding only distilled urine and not silver or gold. You can also dissolve the stone in water and then distill it. This will increase the quantity and quality 100-fold. Anything you can think of to purify or dissolve and then coagulate the stone will increase its quality. And anything dissolved and overpowered by the stone will become the stone also and increase its quantity. An open entrance to the closed palace of the king, by an anonymous sage and lover of truth. Take the perfect stone, add 1 part of it to 3 or 4 parts of purified mercury of our first work. Subject it to gentle coction for 7 days, the vessel being carefully sealed up, and let it pass through all the rains, which it will do very quickly and smoothly. The tinging powder of the substance will thus be exalted 1,000-fold, and if you go through the whole process a second time, which you can do with ease in 3 days, the medicine will be much more precious still. This you may repeat as often as you like. The 3rd time the substance will run through all the rains in a day, the 4th time in a single hour, and so on. And the improvement of its quality will be most marvelous. Then kneel down and render thanks to God for this precious treasure. When the stone is sufficiently strong, you will be able to multiply it just by melting a mass of gold or silver and then throwing a bit of the stone into the melted gold. All of it will be quickly turned into more and stronger Philosopher's stone. If the stone becomes really powerful, you will be able to do this with any metal, since the stone will transmute it all the way into more stone instead of leaving it as gold. Then you need to dilute the stone if you want to make gold. Projection. The projection is a reasonably simple matter of melting the metal to be transmuted, then throwing a little bit of the stone into it. The lower the melting temperature of the metal, the easier it is transmuted, and less of the stone will be required. So mercury is the best, and then lead. It is recommended to wrap the stone in wax or added filings of gold to the melted metal. Others recommend dissolving the stone and projecting it in the liquid state instead of solid state. If the stone is too weak, not all of the metal will be transmuted, and you will have to add more stone. If the stone is too strong, then the metal might be converted into the stone itself instead of gold, so the stone will need to be diluted. From A Brief Guide to the Celestial Ruby. This wonderful medicine penetrates each smallest part of the base metals in their proportion of 1 to 1,000 and tinges them through and through with its own noble nature. Your arithmetic will fail sooner than its all-prevailing power. Each smallest part that is pervaded with the vitalizing power of the elixir in its turn tinges that part which is nearest to it until the whole mass is leavened with its marvelous influence and brought to the perfection of gold. Appearance. The appearance of the red stone is different depending how many times it has been multiplied in quality, and therefore how pure and powerful it is. At first it is a dull red and opaque, but becomes brighter and transparent purple when more refined. It is very heavy. From A Brief Guide to the Celestial Ruby. Know then that it is called a stone not because it is like a stone, but only because by virtue of its fixed nature. It resists the action of fire as successfully as any stone. In species it is gold, more pure than the purest. It is fixed and incombustible like a stone, but its appearance is that of very fine powder, impalpable to the touch, sweet to the taste, fragrant to the smell, in potency a most penetrative spirit, apparently dry and yet unctuous, and easily capable of tinging a plate of metal. From On the Philosopher's Stone. Having thus completed the operation, let the vessel cool, and on opening it you will perceive your matter to be fixed into a ponderous mass thoroughly of a scarlet color, which is easily reducible to powder by scraping or otherwise, and in being heated in the fire, flows like wax without smoking, flaming, or loss of substance, returning when cold to its former fixity, heavier than gold bulk for bulk, yet easy to be dissolved in any liquid in which a few grains being taken, its operation most wonderfully pervades the human body to the extirpation of all disorders, prolonging life by its use to its utmost period, and hence it has obtained the appellation of panacea, or a universal remedy. Now I will provide a checklist of all the items required to perform the great work, and remember all of the glass must be made of borosilicate. It is recommended to get 2 of everything, 2 500 milliliter retorts, a 500 milliliter glass bottle, a 50 milliliter round bottom flask, Keldal flask, pipettes, stoppers, a water bath, portable stove, a triangle stand, small bottles, spatulas, stoppers, dishes, and a mortar and pestle. Now the reason this works is because the earth, everything around us is striving for perfection. For example, it does this by fire and water, which are the only ways of purification. A great flood, water is used to perfect, followed by extreme heat, calcification, great fire, revelations, alternate back and forth to reach higher and higher degrees of purification, or evolution. Now the ancient alchemists also speak of 4 different ages, beginning with the Golden Age, where everyone has the stone, and if they don't need it. All are truly happy 100% of the time, and no one needs any rules or technology. There's no such thing as money. Truth and nature are obvious, and everyone is very spiritual, good times. Now it moves to the Silver Age. Catastrophe. Everyone has the stone. People are mostly happy, but people start to develop advanced technology. This is the age of technology. There's no need to work still, but people like inventing things. Ownership of property starts, which causes problems, and by the end, there are wars. Bronze Age. Catastrophe. All by way of evolution. Survivors keep the stone away from the newly evolved humans and begin to call themselves gods. They build cities and rule the new humans. There is still some technology the gods keep for themselves. The gods decide the new currency is gold and silver because they can easily produce these metals and the new humans cannot. People are happy half of the time, 50%. And finally the Iron Age. Catastrophe, all by way of evolution and perfection. The gods are dead now, or hiding. The technology is mostly lost. The stone is kept very secret by the ones who manage to retain the knowledge. People start to care about money more than anything else. The people can't live without rules, but good rulers are few and far between. People are depressed and lose the ability to comprehend truth, preferring to believe their own lies. In the very latter part of this time, as the Iron Age is starting to pass back into the Golden Age again, technology starts to develop. But this is only temporary and doesn't develop properly, as the best kept technology is kept secret and the people can't understand nature. At the end of the Iron Age, the stone is rediscovered and given back into the world, which is the catalyst causing all secrets to be released, which ushers in the Golden Age. Civilization is not linear, it's circular. The stone excels everything it interacts with, bringing it towards its own higher frequency. All frequencies are influenced by higher frequencies, but low frequencies cannot influence higher frequencies. By expanding your awareness, traditionally by meditation or by taking the stone, you can tune yourself into a higher frequency. In the past, this was known as leaving this world for a higher plane, but since Earth is shifting into a higher frequency herself, we can stay here a while. Now, that was a culmination of many different books put together by ancient alchemists on how to create the Philosopher's Stone. I hope that you can use this as a guide for yourself to create this stone and usher it back in to the world as we return to the Golden Age, as the Age of Aquarius begins. Reality is often more crazy than what we deem fantasy, and fantasy is merely things that we have forgotten about and will eventually resurface, as everything is cyclical. And if you are interested in more occult, esoteric topics and their involvement with health of the mind, the body, the spirit, all unified, then you can check out my book, My Holistic Temple, on Amazon, where I go extensively into many topics like this and other history that isn't talked about in the regular history books. Thank you for taking the time to hear what the ancient alchemists had to say about creating the stone, and that perhaps you may realize it is more real than you may believe. And I will see you in the next video.